The woman in the Mercedes was breaking apart. Her manicured fingers gripped a cracked phone. Tears streamed down her face, smearing expensive makeup. Benjamin Carter watched from his rusted pickup truck, his sleeping 6-year-old son curled around a wooden bridge toy in the back seat. 9:30 at night. Riverside gas station. $15 left in his wallet. The elegant stranger wore a cashmere coat that cost more than his monthly rent. She looked like she had everything, sounded like she had nothing. Benjamin's calloused hands hesitated on the door handle. He'd learned to mind his own business in a world that rarely minded his. But something about her desperate sobs cut through his exhaustion. Something about the way she stared at his son's innocent face through the window. What he couldn't know was that this broken woman had just decided to give him everything she owned. Benjamin turned off the engine and stepped into the cold October air. His work boots crunched against the asphalt as he approached the Mercedes. The woman looked up through her window, startled. Her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, like someone who'd forgotten how to hope. She rolled down the window slowly, as if bracing for judgment or pity. Instead, Benjamin's voice came out gentle, worn smooth by 14 months of single fatherhood. "Mum, you all right? Need some help?" The question hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. The stranger's breath caught. When was the last time someone had asked if she was okay? When was the last time someone had stopped? She glanced again at the sleeping child in Benjamin's truck, clutching that wooden bridge like a lifeline. Something about the boy's peaceful face made her chest tighten with a familiar ache. "I'm Catherine," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Kate. And I don't know if I'm all right anymore." The honesty surprised them both. Benjamin nodded slowly, understanding flooding his weathered features. He knew that feeling intimately. Lucas stirred in the back seat, his small voice cutting through the tension. "Daddy, why is the pretty lady sad?" Benjamin's heart clenched. Even at 6 years old, his son noticed pain in others. It was a gift inherited from his mother, Linda, who'd seen kindness as her greatest legacy. Kate's tears fell harder now, but they seemed different, cleaner somehow. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked through the window. Lucas held up his wooden bridge, pride shining in his sleepy eyes. "I'm Lucas. I build bridges so people don't have to be alone." The simplicity of it shattered something inside Kate's chest. The gas station's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that couldn't hide the tenderness growing between strangers. Benjamin found himself sharing pieces of his story. How Linda had died of cancer 18 months ago. How Lucas still asked when Mommy was coming home. How some nights felt so long that morning seemed impossible. Kate listened without offering empty platitudes or well-meaning advice. She just heard him. Really heard him. When he finished, she spoke quietly about Oliver, her 8-year-old son who died in a car accident 6 months ago. About how today would have been his 9th birthday. About how she'd driven to the cemetery but couldn't make herself get out of the car. Oliver loved bridges too, Kate said, her voice breaking on his name. He said they connected places so people wouldn't be lonely. Lucas perked up at this, pressing his face against the window. "Can I show him my bridge, when I see him in heaven?" The question was so innocent, so hopeful, that both adults felt their broken pieces shifting into new configurations. Kate reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. A smiling boy with Oliver's eyes and a stubborn chin, standing beside an elaborate Lego bridge construction. "He would have loved your bridge, Lucas. He would have wanted to build one with you." The conversation moved naturally from the gas pumps to the 24-hour diner down the road. Benjamin hesitated about the cost, but Kate insisted it was her treat. The Riverside diner was nearly empty, fluorescent lights buzzing over red vinyl booths and worn formica tables. Lucas slid into the booth beside Kate, chattering about his bridge designs while she listened with the focused attention of someone starved for a child's voice. Benjamin watched this interaction with wonder and growing warmth. Kate wasn't performing kindness or offering charity. She was simply present, asking genuine questions about Lucas's creations, sharing stories about Oliver's engineering dreams. Over coffee and Lucas's chocolate chip pancakes, the barriers between them continued to dissolve. Kate learned that Benjamin worked double shifts at the warehouse, that Lucas spent long hours in after-school care, that they lived in a one-bedroom apartment where Lucas slept on a pull-out couch. She heard the pride in Benjamin's voice when he talked about his son's intelligence, his kindness, his resilience. There was no self-pity in Benjamin's story, just love wrapped around struggle-like armor. When Kate mentioned her foundation work, she kept the details vague. Just that she helped families in need. Just that she understood how precious and fragile life could be. Lucas, his energy renewed by sugar and attention, began dismantling his wooden bridge. With careful deliberation, he placed half the pieces in front of Kate. "These are for Oliver," he announced solemnly. "When you miss him, you can build a bridge to where he is." Kate's composure finally cracked completely. She pressed the wooden pieces to her chest and sobbed. Not the desperate, hollow crying from the gas station, but tears of recognition, of connection, of a grief finally witnessed and understood. Benjamin's hand found hers across the table, steady and warm. As they prepared to leave the diner, Kate pulled out a business card. Catherine Armstrong, Wellington Foundation. The name meant nothing to Benjamin, but something in Kate's demeanor had shifted. She seemed more purposeful now, more determined. "Would you call me tomorrow?" she asked. "There's something I'd like to discuss." Benjamin studied her face, searching for hidden motives or conditions, but all he saw was sincerity mixed with something that looked almost like desperate hope. "We don't need charity," he said carefully. Kate's smile was soft but firm. "Not charity, something else entirely, trust me." The drive home was quiet, Lucas having fallen asleep almost immediately after being buckled in. Benjamin's mind raced with questions about the elegant stranger who'd shared her deepest pain with people she'd known for 3 hours. There was something about Kate that didn't quite fit together. The expensive clothes, the luxury car, the way she'd insisted on paying for dinner without checking the bill. But there was also something genuine about her grief, her connection with Lucas, her careful way of listening without judging. As he carried his sleeping son up the stairs to their small apartment, Benjamin couldn't shake the feeling that this ordinary Tuesday night had somehow become extraordinary. Kate sat in her empty mansion in the hills above Riverside, staring at Oliver's bedroom door. She'd avoided this room for 6 months, unable to bear the sight of his unfinished Lego projects and carefully arranged books. Tonight she turned the handle and stepped inside. The room smelled like childhood and dreams and the lingering ghost of her son's laughter. On his desk sat his masterpiece, a detailed Lego bridge spanning an imaginary river, complete with tiny cars and pedestrians. She placed Lucas's wooden bridge pieces beside it, and for the first time since the accident, Oliver's room felt peaceful instead of painful. At 3 a.m, Kate made a phone call that would change everything. James Mitchell, her personal attorney, was accustomed to her late-night emergencies. The Armstrong fortune came with 24/7 legal support and the ability to move mountains in hours instead of months. "James, I need you to prepare documentation for an emergency charitable gift, full property transfer and educational trust establishment. I need this completed by 8 a.m. Her voice was steady, determined. She'd spent hours thinking about Benjamin's pride, Lucas's potential, and Oliver's memory. This wasn't impulse. This was purpose. The Victorian house at 847 Maple Street had been on the Armstrong Foundation's acquisition list for months. Kate had driven past it countless times, imagining it filled with the laughter of children who needed safe spaces to grow. She'd noticed Benjamin and Lucas walking by during their evening strolls, watched how they always paused to admire the wraparound porch and maple trees. Benjamin never looked at the house with envy, just appreciation. Lucas would point out architectural details with the enthusiasm of a future engineer. They belonged in that house. Kate was simply going to make it happen. Benjamin woke to insistent knocking at 7:45 in the morning. Through the peephole, he saw a man in an expensive suit holding a manila envelope and a set of keys. James Mitchell introduced himself with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to delivering life-changing news before breakfast. "Mr. Carter, I represent the Armstrong Foundation. Ms. Armstrong has worked through the night to complete an emergency charitable placement on your behalf." The words didn't make sense. Benjamin's coffee-deprived brain struggled to process emergency and charitable in the same sentence. "There must be some mistake," Benjamin said, his hand tightening on the doorframe. "I met her once, for a few hours." James smiled with genuine warmth. "Ms. Armstrong is worth approximately $2.3 billion, Mr. Carter. When she decides to help someone, she has the resources to act immediately. She's established a complete educational trust for Lucas, covering all expenses from preschool through doctoral degree. The fund is worth $2.3 million. Benjamin's legs suddenly felt unsteady. Lucas appeared at his elbow, rubbing sleepy eyes and staring curiously at the stranger with the fancy briefcase. "Additionally," James continued, producing a deed and house keys, "the Foundation has purchased the Victorian property at 847 Maple Street for your family. Cash transaction completed at 6 a.m. this morning. Ms. Armstrong mentioned that you and Lucas admire the house during your walks." Benjamin's world tilted off its axis. The house with the wraparound porch and the maple trees that Lucas loved to climb. The house they'd dreamed about but never dared to want. "This can't be real," Benjamin whispered. But the keys were solid and warm in his palm. Lucas tugged on Benjamin's shirt, his voice filled with wonder. "Daddy, is that the house with the big tree? The one where I wanted to build a tree fort?" James nodded solemnly. "The very one, young man. There's also a workshop in the basement, perfect for bridge building." Lucas's eyes went wide. "Can Miss Kate come see my new bridges? She promised to help me build one for Oliver." The innocence of the question hit Benjamin like a physical blow. His son was already including Kate in their future, as if miracles were simply part of Tuesday morning routine. The neighbors had gathered by the time Benjamin and Lucas walked to their new home. Mrs. Chen from apartment 3B dabbed at her eyes with her apron. "It's like something from a movie," she whispered. "That beautiful lady was an angel." But Benjamin felt overwhelmed rather than grateful. The magnitude of Kate's gift pressed against his chest like a weight. He'd spent 14 months proving he could provide for his son independently. This felt like an admission of failure, a public acknowledgement that he wasn't enough. Even as Lucas ran through the empty rooms with pure joy, Benjamin couldn't shake the feeling that accepting this much generosity came with invisible strings. He tried calling Kate 17 times throughout the day. Each call went straight to voicemail. His messages grew more desperate with each attempt. "Kate, I need to understand why. This is too much. Lucas is over the moon, but I need to know what you expect in return." The silence felt ominous. Rich people didn't give away millions without reasons. Benjamin had watched enough news to know that charity often came with conditions, that generosity could be a form of control. By evening, gratitude had mixed with paranoia, creating a cocktail of emotions he couldn't name. That night, Benjamin tucked Lucas into his first real bedroom. The boy had spent the day arranging his few possessions in the spacious room, his wooden bridge collection displayed proudly on the windowsill. "Daddy, why did Miss Kate give us a house?" Lucas asked, his voice drowsy with contentment. Benjamin sat on the edge of the bed, searching for words that would make sense to a 6-year-old. Sometimes people want to help because they've been hurt too, buddy. Miss Kate misses Oliver very much. Lucas nodded seriously. So we're like a band-aid for her heart. The simplicity of his son's understanding brought tears to Benjamin's eyes. 3 days later, Kate finally appeared on their new front porch. She looked fragile but determined, like someone who'd made a difficult decision and intended to see it through. Benjamin opened the door before she could knock, his relief and anger warring for dominance. "I owe you an explanation," Kate said simply. "May I come in?" Lucas barreled past Benjamin before he could respond, wrapping his arms around Kate's waist. "Miss Kate, come see my new room. I made a bridge city on my desk." Her laugh was genuine, but Benjamin noticed the tremor in her hands as she returned Lucas's hug. They sat in the kitchen while Lucas gave Kate a detailed tour of his bridge collection. Benjamin watched her face carefully, searching for signs of condescension or performance. Instead, he saw someone listening with complete attention, asking technical questions that made Lucas beam with pride. When Lucas ran upstairs to retrieve his newest creation, Kate turned to Benjamin with eyes that held exhaustion and something deeper. "The night we met, I was driving to the Ohio River Bridge. I was going to—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Benjamin's anger evaporated instantly. "I'd lost hope." Kate continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Oliver's death broke something in me that I couldn't fix. I couldn't see the point of continuing. Then Lucas showed me his bridge and talked about connecting people so they wouldn't be alone. It felt like Oliver speaking through him." Benjamin's throat tightened with understanding. "Your kindness that night, your willingness to stop for a crying stranger, Lucas's innocent wisdom about bridges. You reminded me that love still exists in the world, that people still care about each other." Kate explained about the Armstrong Foundation, about her family's commitment to education and community support, about how the scholarship program had been Oliver's idea, something he'd wanted to start when he grew up. "This isn't charity, Benjamin. It's Oliver's legacy. Lucas will grow up building bridges, literal and metaphorical ones. He'll connect communities and heal divisions. This is what Oliver would have wanted." Benjamin felt his resistance crumbling. The gift wasn't about his inadequacy as a provider. It was about two grieving people finding purpose in each other's pain. "But why the house?" Benjamin asked. "Why so much?" Kate's smile was sad, but genuine. "I've driven past this house hundreds of times, imagining it filled with children's laughter. When I noticed you and Lucas admiring it during your walks, I knew it was meant to be yours. Oliver would have loved this house. He would have wanted Lucas to have the childhood he can't." The explanation was simple and devastating. Benjamin understood now that Kate wasn't buying his gratitude or creating dependence. She was honoring her son's memory through Lucas's future. Lucas returned with his latest bridge creation, a complex wooden structure that spanned the entire length of the kitchen table. "This one goes from sad to happy," he announced proudly. "Miss Kate, will you help me build the next one? For Oliver?" Kate's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was radiant. "I would be honored, Lucas. What should we build together?" Lucas considered this seriously. "A bridge that goes all the way to heaven, so Oliver can visit whenever he wants." The innocence of the request hung in the air like a benediction. Over the following weeks, Kate became a regular presence in their lives, not as a benefactor keeping tabs on her investment, but as someone starved for the simple rhythms of family life. She attended Lucas's school events, helped with homework, shared stories about Oliver that made the dead boy feel present rather than absent. Benjamin watched his son flourish under her attention, his confidence growing with each passing day. The boy who'd been so careful not to ask for too much was learning to expect love and support as his birthright. The Armstrong Foundation officially launched its Riverside initiative on a crisp November morning. Benjamin had been hired as community liaison, a position that utilized his understanding of struggling families while paying a salary that reflected his worth rather than his desperation. The job description was simple: identify families who needed support and ensure that help was delivered with dignity rather than dependency. Kate trusted his judgment completely, knowing that his own experience with pride and need made him uniquely qualified to navigate the complex emotions around receiving help. The first family Benjamin identified was the Johnsons, a young couple dealing with their infant daughter's medical bills. He'd seen Maria Johnson crying in the grocery store when her card was declined, watched her husband Tom work 3 jobs while studying for his nursing degree. Benjamin approached them carefully, emphasizing opportunity rather than charity. The Armstrong Foundation needed a case study for their medical support program. Would they be willing to participate in exchange for having their daughter's treatment costs covered? The framing allowed the Johnsons to maintain their dignity while getting desperately needed help. Winter brought unexpected challenges and deeper connections. Kate's father, Harrison Armstrong, arrived from Boston with legal documents and barely concealed fury. He'd discovered his daughter's reckless charitable spending and intended to put a stop to it immediately. The confrontation happened in Benjamin's living room, with Lucas building bridges at the kitchen table, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding nearby. "Catherine, you've given away nearly $5 million to complete strangers. This behavior indicates serious emotional instability. I'm recommending psychiatric evaluation and temporary guardianship of your assets." Kate's response surprised everyone, including herself. "Daddy, I've never been more stable in my life. For the first time since Oliver died, I have purpose. Benjamin and Lucas didn't take anything from me. They gave me back my will to live." Harrison Armstrong looked around the modest living room with obvious distaste, his gaze lingering on Lucas's bridge collection with incomprehension. "You're playing house with a mechanics family, Catherine. This isn't grief counseling, it's financial suicide." Benjamin stood slowly, his working-class dignity evident in every movement. "Mr. Armstrong, your daughter saved our lives, but more than that, she saved her own. Maybe you should ask yourself why she needed saving in the first place." The argument escalated quickly, with Harrison threatening legal action and Kate threatening to liquidate the entire Armstrong fortune before submitting to psychiatric evaluation. Lucas appeared in the doorway, his small face concerned. "Miss Kate, why is the angry man making you cry?" The simplicity of the question cut through the adult complexities like a knife. Kate knelt to Lucas's level, her voice steady despite her tears. "Sometimes grown-ups disagree about important things, sweetheart. But nothing is going to change between us, okay? I promise." Harrison Armstrong left Riverside that evening with a deeper understanding of his daughter's transformation. He'd expected to find Catherine being manipulated by opportunistic strangers. Instead, he found a woman who'd discovered purpose in the midst of devastating loss. Lucas's innocent questions about bridge building, Benjamin's quiet dignity in the face of class-based insults, and Catherine's fierce protection of her chosen family had shifted something in the older man's perspective. He couldn't approve of his daughter's choices, but he could no longer dismiss them as emotional instability. Spring brought the groundbreaking ceremony for the Oliver Armstrong Memorial Bridge, a pedestrian walkway that would span Riverside Creek and connect the east and west sides of town. Lucas, now 7 and increasingly confident, was chosen to break ground alongside Kate and the mayor. The boy took his ceremonial shovel seriously, declaring that Oliver would be proud to have his name on something that helped people cross safely. Local news covered the event, but Benjamin insisted that Lucas's last name not be mentioned. The boy deserved privacy to grow up without being labeled as the poor kid saved by a billionaire. The bridge project became a community effort, with local contractors donating labor and materials, while the Armstrong Foundation covered major expenses. Benjamin found himself coordinating between Kate's resources and the town's needs, translating between worlds that rarely understood each other. His warehouse experience with logistics proved invaluable, as did his ability to speak both languages, the careful pride of people who needed help, and the efficient generosity of those who had resources to share. Kate marveled at his diplomatic skills, the way he could frame assistance as opportunity and gifts as partnerships. Lucas's art had evolved dramatically over the months. His bridge drawings were no longer simple spans between 2 points, but complex networks connecting multiple destinations. His latest masterpiece, displayed proudly in Kate's office, showed a bridge that extended from Earth to clouds, with small figures crossing back and forth between the two realms. That's so people can visit their loved ones in heaven, he'd explained matter-of-factly. And so the people in heaven can check on us down here. The drawing had become Kate's most treasured possession, a visual representation of the connection she felt with Oliver through Lucas's innocent wisdom. The first graduation from the Armstrong Foundation scholarship program happened in June. Sarah Chen, a single mother who'd been working 3 jobs while studying nursing, walked across the stage with tears streaming down her face. Her 2 young children cheered from the audience, understanding that their mother's achievement meant security for their family. Kate sat with Benjamin and Lucas, watching as the ripple effects of that first night at the gas station continued to spread. 18 families were now part of the Foundation's support network, each one carefully chosen for their potential rather than their problems. Lucas's 8th birthday party was held in the backyard of the Maple Street house, under the oak tree he'd dreamed of climbing. Kate had wanted to plan something elaborate, but Benjamin insisted on keeping it simple. Pizza, cake, and a handful of Lucas's classmates running around the yard with boundless energy. The best moment came when Lucas blew out his candles and announced his wish. I wished for Oliver to know that his bridge idea worked, that people aren't alone anymore because of what he dreamed. Kate's tears were happy ones now, evidence of healing rather than breaking. That evening, after the guests had gone home and Lucas had fallen asleep surrounded by new Lego sets, Benjamin and Kate sat on the front porch swing. The conversation was comfortable, built on months of shared experiences and growing trust. Do you think we're doing right by him? Benjamin asked, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Giving him this much, this young? Kate considered the question seriously. I think we're giving him what every child deserves, the security to dream big and the support to achieve those dreams. Oliver never got that chance. Lucas will. The 2nd anniversary of Oliver's death arrived with unexpected peace instead of overwhelming grief. Kate woke up thinking about her son's laughter rather than his absence, remembering his dreams rather than mourning their interruption. She and Lucas had planned a special bridge-building session, using Oliver's favorite Lego sets to create something new together. Benjamin watched from the kitchen doorway as Kate patiently guided Lucas through the construction process, both of them completely absorbed in their shared project. The scene looked exactly like what it was, a family choosing love over loss. As autumn returned to Riverside, the Armstrong Foundation had quietly become a model for community-based philanthropy. Delegations from other cities visited regularly, studying the careful balance between assistance and dignity that Benjamin had helped establish. Kate found herself testifying before state education committees, sharing Oliver's vision of bridges that connected opportunity with need. Lucas accompanied her to several of these presentations, his drawings illustrating the concepts better than any statistical analysis. The boy's latest project was his most ambitious yet, a detailed proposal for bridges in 5 different communities, complete with cost estimates and impact projections. His 2nd-grade teacher had initially dismissed it as too advanced, until she realized that Lucas understood the mathematics behind his dreams. Bridges cost money, he'd explained seriously, but lonely costs more. The wisdom of it had left his teacher speechless and earned him a special presentation slot at the school's science fair. Halloween brought unexpected visitors to the Maple Street house. Harrison Armstrong arrived unannounced, carrying a costume bag and a tentative smile. "I thought Lucas might like to dress as an engineer this year," he said carefully, "complete with authentic blueprints and safety equipment." The gesture was small but significant, representing his growing acceptance of his daughter's chosen family. Lucas was delighted with the costume and spent the evening explaining bridge engineering to other trick-or-treaters with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found his calling. Winter's return marked 18 months since that first night at the gas station. Kate suggested they celebrate by returning to the Riverside Diner, this time as a family tradition rather than a meeting of strangers. The same booth, the same fluorescent lights, but everything else had changed. Lucas chatted easily with the waitress about his bridge projects. Benjamin discussed foundation business with comfortable authority, and Kate looked relaxed in a way she'd never achieved during her previous life of isolated wealth. The conversation turned to future plans, dreams that had seemed impossible 2 years ago, but now felt achievable. Lucas wanted to study engineering at Stanford, following in Oliver's imagined footsteps. Benjamin was considering taking college courses himself, using his foundation salary to pursue the education he'd never been able to afford. Kate talked about expanding the foundation internationally, creating bridge programs in communities around the world. Each dream supported the others, creating a web of interconnected possibilities. Christmas morning arrived with snow blanketing the Maple Street house, transforming it into the winter wonderland Lucas had wished for. Kate had moved into the guest room permanently, not as a romantic partner to Benjamin, but as chosen family, as someone who belonged in the rhythms of their daily life. The arrangement worked because it had grown naturally from need and affection rather than obligation or expectation. They were 3 people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to build something luminous together. Lucas's Christmas gift to Kate was a photo album he'd created with Benjamin's help. Every page showed a different bridge they'd built together over the past 18 months, from simple wooden structures to elaborate Lego cities. The final page held a drawing of the 3 of them standing on the Oliver Armstrong Memorial Bridge, with Oliver's spirit visible in the clouds above, smiling down at the family he'd helped create. Kate held the album against her chest and cried the kind of tears that heal rather than hurt. The new year brought an unexpected phone call from a television producer interested in documenting the Armstrong Foundation's work. Kate politely declined, preferring to keep their story private. "Some bridges," she told the disappointed producer, "are meant to be crossed quietly." Benjamin agreed completely, understanding that their healing had happened away from public scrutiny, in the sacred space between strangers who'd chosen to become family. Lucas's 9th birthday was celebrated at the completed Oliver Armstrong Memorial Bridge, with the entire community invited to share cake and watch the boy cut the ribbon for the bridge's first official crossing. Local children had contributed drawings to a time capsule that would be opened in 25 years, when Lucas would presumably be building bridges professionally. His own contribution was a letter to Oliver, thanking him for the idea that had saved his family and promising to spend his life connecting people across whatever divided them. Spring brought college acceptances for several of the Foundation's scholarship recipients, young people who'd grown up knowing that education was possible regardless of their family's financial circumstances. Kate spoke at each graduation ceremony, always emphasizing Oliver's role in inspiring the program and Lucas's wisdom in reminding adults that bridges were about connection rather than construction. Benjamin watched these speeches with quiet pride, understanding that Kate had found her voice through their unlikely family. The 3rd anniversary of their first meeting was marked not with ceremony, but with an ordinary Tuesday evening at home. Lucas worked on homework at the kitchen table, while Kate helped Benjamin review foundation applications. The radio played softly in the background, and the comfortable silence between them felt like the deepest form of communication. When Lucas looked up from his math problems to ask about dinner plans, Kate realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not dramatic moments or grand gestures, but the peaceful certainty of belonging somewhere. As Lucas prepared for bed that night, he asked the question that had been building for months. "Are you and Dad going to get married, Miss Kate?" The inquiry was practical rather than romantic, coming from a boy who wanted to understand the structure of his family. Kate's answer was honest and gentle. "Marriage is just one way to be a family, sweetheart. What we have is different, but just as real. We choose each other every day." Lucas nodded seriously, satisfied with an explanation that honored the uniqueness of their bond. The Armstrong Foundation's 5th anniversary gala was held not in a fancy hotel, but in the Riverside Community Center, with local families sharing stories about how support had transformed their lives. Lucas, now 12 and startlingly articulate, delivered the keynote speech about bridges as metaphors for hope. His presentation included architectural drawings for bridges he planned to build as an adult, each one named for someone who'd influenced his understanding of connection and community. The Oliver Armstrong International Bridge would span continents, linking communities separated by geography rather than water. As the evening wound down, Kate found herself standing on the Oliver Armstrong Memorial Bridge with Benjamin and Lucas. The water below reflected the lights from the community center, creating patterns that shifted with each gentle breeze. "Do you think he knows?" Lucas asked quietly, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd grown up understanding loss and hope in equal measure. Kate's answer came without hesitation. "I think he knows, sweetheart. I think he's proud of every bridge we've built in his memory." The conversation turned to college plans, with Lucas's acceptance to MIT's engineering program, creating both excitement and melancholy. Kate and Benjamin had always known this day would come, had worked toward it for years, but the reality of Lucas leaving felt both triumphant and heartbreaking. "You'll build amazing things," Kate told him, her voice thick with emotion. "And you'll remember that every bridge starts with someone willing to reach across empty space toward another person." That night, after Lucas had gone to bed, Kate and Benjamin sat in the living room surrounded by photo albums documenting 7 years of shared life. The progression was visible in every picture: 3 strangers becoming a family, grief transforming into purpose, individual healing creating community change. "Do you think we did right by him?" Benjamin asked, echoing his question from years earlier. Kate's answer was more certain now. "We gave him roots and wings. That's all any parent can do." The story had begun with a crying woman, a compassionate stranger, and a child's innocent wisdom about bridges. It continued with 3 people choosing love over fear, connection over isolation, purpose over despair. As Kate finally fell asleep in the house that had become their sanctuary, she thought about Oliver's dream of bridges that prevented loneliness. The dream had come true in ways none of them could have imagined, creating connections that would span generations and touch lives they'd never meet. The final frame of their story wasn't an ending, but a continuation. Lucas building bridges around the world while carrying Oliver's memory forward, Benjamin leading the Foundation's expansion into new communities, and Kate discovering that the best way to honor a lost child was to nurture the dreams of living ones. The bridge they'd built together had done exactly what Lucas had promised that first night. It had connected people so they didn't have to be alone. Sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Sometimes strangers become family through shared grief and mutual healing. Sometimes a child's wooden bridge becomes the foundation for connections that span lifetimes. The woman who'd been breaking apart in a gas station parking lot had become whole again, not by forgetting her loss, but by transforming it into love. The man who'd stopped to help a crying stranger had discovered that compassion multiplies when it's shared. The boy who built bridges had learned that the most important connections happen not between places but between hearts. Years later, When people asked Lucas about his inspiration for the revolutionary bridge designs that connected communities around the world, he would always mention Oliver, the boy he'd never met, but whose memory had shaped his understanding of what it meant to build something that brought people together. He would talk about his father's quiet strength and his chosen mother's fierce love. But mostly, he would remember a Tuesday night when 3 broken people decided to help each other heal, proving that sometimes the most profound bridges are built not with steel and concrete, but with kindness, patience, and the revolutionary idea that no one has to cross their darkness alone.